All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 202nd Governance and Risk Call. My name is Peyton. I'm a governance facilitator here at MakerDAO. I go by Pros11 online. Really honored to be hosting this call again this week, joined by a bunch of awesome people who are both interested or work on or with the Maker protocol. And this is our weekly call where we talk about what's going on in the governance and risk realm. So if you'll let me lay down a few rules before we get started. You might have noticed this call is being recorded. So hello if you're watching on YouTube. For all of us that are here live, let's try not to talk over one another as it makes for a bad viewing experience, as well as meeting one for those of us that are here. While we're at it, if you are able, would encourage turning cameras on, especially during our discussion segment, or if you are going to talk or ask a question. Obviously, this is recorded and will be on YouTube, so completely your choice and fine if you don't want to partake in that. But if you are open to that sort of thing, would encourage you to do so as a way to kind of build community, let us see who all is here and taking part in these discussions. Finally, would want to highlight our raise hand function within Zoom here. So if you would like to join the speakers list, add something in as David is demonstrating here, you can hit the reactions button and click raise hand. That'll just let me know that you have something to say. I can call on you and make it a little more smooth. Otherwise, you can always drop your questions or comments in the chat. I'm happy to read them out if you're unable or otherwise unwilling to hop on the mic. Cool. I think that's enough of the less fun stuff. So let's get into some actual governance. We'll start as usual with our governance roundup, consisting of the votes, a review of our maker improvement proposals, as well as what's going on in the forum. And no initiative updates today, so we have a main discussion topic of the new proposed delegation MIP set, which covers some delegate definitions, as well as DIE and MKR delegate compensation. And then we do have a kind of backup overflow topic of some CU splitting. So if we don't have much to say on delegate comp, don't worry, we'll have plenty of topics to go over. Excellent. Well, might as well get started then. Oh yeah, one final thing I was going to ask. We'll try to do a little bit of job of introducing people as they talk. I know that can be confusing for new timers as well as people on the recording not knowing who's saying what, but we're going to try to give that a go. So if I forget, if you can remember, that'd be awesome. And between the two of us, we'll try to get everyone properly introduced. Cool. So directing our attention to the polls here, we did have 3 weekly polls that concluded this past week. All of them passed. Top one being the Open Market Committee parameter proposals. We had the Maker teleport deployment on StarkNet and a few risk parameters there, as well as the tactical reallocation process for budget adjustments. So those all passed. We've got a few notes on some of those on the forum as there was some confusion with the budget allocation process. So I would encourage people to read that out, but all those proposals did pass. And one more proposal to highlight on my end would be the ongoing green light poll for Pando. That Pando investment grade climate assets green light ends on August 15th. All right, wonderful. That'll take us to executive proposals. We do still have a executive that is pending. It's got about 82,000 MKR supporting it presently, which means it's fairly close to passing. It contains the HV bank drawdown and the Keeper network stream redeployment. For next week's executive, we're planning another HV bank drawdown. Those are coming in 25 million DIE increments. There'll be one more planned after this. We'll have the Maker Open Market Committee parameter changes I mentioned a second ago. We'll activate the SoftGen vault. If you recall a little bit ago, they still had to verify controlling the kind of end address there that would receive the funds. So once that happens, we'll okay the vault. And finally, we do have recognized delegate compensation for July. All right, that feels like many words for me, so I'm more than happy to pass off the mic. Today, I'll be handing off to Gala, a member of the GovAlpha Core to give us the MIPS update.
Hello, thank you, Peyton. So yes, this is Gala from GovAlpha to give you the MIPS general updates of this week. So August formal submission window closed yesterday. A total of 6 proposals were submitted. We have one top level MIP, which is MIPS 76, 𝘱𝘰𝘳𝘕𝘂𝘪𝘠𝑟𝑒 Redux. It's a 10 million pool allocated across liquidity pools to support DAI liquidity, utility, and yield. This was initially introduced as a special purpose fund and rejected. So this proposal has been reworked and will be up for vote on Monday. There are 2 core unit budget proposals that will be entering this cycle. One is for the DAI Foundation core unit. It includes multiple options covering bear and super bear market scenarios. Their base case is a slightly reduced version of their previous budget. And we have one proposal for the Oracle's core unit with 2 options. One, which would be the reiteration of their previous budget, and a second option with a new budget reduced by 10%, that includes an exception from further reductions for 1 year. We have a core unit offboarding. So the events offboarding proposal will enter the August cycle. A severance payment of 103,336 DAI will be transferred if this offboarding is ratified. For the amendments, we have 2 formally submitted sub-proposals. So the core unit offboarding process amendment and the MIP 50 direct deposit module amendment. So let's get a look at the proposals in RFC now. GovAlpha's facilitator Patrick J just posted a MIP set including 3 proposals. MIP 77 formalizes and defines the recognized and shadow delegates roles, and then MIPs 78 and 79 define the way that compensation in DAI and MKR is established for recognized delegates. The MIP set will replace MIP 61. For core unit onboardings, perfect. So we have part of the team from Real World Finance 001 core unit is splitting and proposing the creation of a second Real World Finance core unit, which would be Real World Finance 0x. This new core unit would get 75% of the budget currently assigned to RWF 001, leaving RWF 001 with 25% of its budget. In this case, a budget transfer between core units will take place. Christian Petersen is aiming to be the facilitator of this new core unit. Next, we have a top-level MIP that has been around for a while, that is MIP 72, authorizing Success Capital as a real-world asset arranger for MakerDAO. For core unit offboardings, the offboarding proposal for Immunified Security core unit and Strategic Happiness core units, they will remain in RFC for now. We have a Psychonauts proposal as a facilitator for the Immunified Security core unit that will also remain in RFC. And finally, we have the amendments. MIP 0, the amendment to MIP 0, introducing retrospection dates for MIPs, which is currently being worked on by its author. And the recently posted MIP for C2 sub-proposal 24, which aims to shorten the feedback loop for delegate participation, which is currently calculated on a lifetime basis, and it's a key variable of their compensation calculation. Please note that this sub-proposal addresses some of the issues that are covered by the delegate MIP set that we just mentioned. And please review both of them. So for important dates, the ratification polls for the formal submissions will go up next Monday. Please go cast your votes. And if you're working on a proposal and you want it to be eligible to enter September cycle, please post it on the forum no later than Wednesday, August the 10th. Note also that the next formal submission window for budget proposals is set for September's governance cycle as well. So that's it for MIPS. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Gala. That was super informative. Cool. And as a reminder, there is a weekly MIPS update post, so you can see exactly what's going on and get all this stuff in detail in a written form, in case you didn't absorb it all just now. Excellent. So that should take us to our forum update section. And I believe I'll be passing the mic over to Artem from GovComms.
Yes, I just posted the link to the forum recap and happy Thursday call day to everyone. Welcome to the forum recap for the GNR. We'll be going over the week of July 28th to August 3rd of forum news and announcements and signal requests. And we'll get started with our news and announcements. First up, we have recognized Delegate Governance House, that was their previous name, who have merged with 𝘰𝘰𝘬𝘳𝘠. 𝘰𝘰𝘬𝘬 collaborates with DAOs on protocol engineering, treasury allocation, and analytics. And so Delegate Governance House name is now 𝘰𝘰𝘬𝘬. And they introduce also their new members of their team, along with some more opportunities that will be able to help MakerDAO through this new collaboration. And next up, we have, as quickly mentioned earlier by Peyton, GovAlpha made a post clarifying the wording of a governance poll posted on August 2nd, which aimed on gathering sentiment about whether to approve the proposal by Strategic Finance for tactical reallocation of budgets. And the original wording could have been interpreted to suggest that any changes resulting from this process could have entered directly into an executive vote, which is incorrect and now has been clarified on the poll. And next up, we have PE, who announced that they are deploying a simple permissionless bridge on Arbitrum Nova to ensure that its users will be using canonical DAI and remove the need for any token migration. Also, there's no specific risk parameters to be set until teleport or DAI minting are enabled, and also no executive is required to support the bridge. And now let's move on to our signal requests. There's currently one signal live right now, posted by recognized delegate GFX Labs. So the vault stability fee for Success Capital was set to 3% at the launch and has yet to be adjusted. And GFX Labs is asking the community whether to reset the fee to the prime rate minus 25 base points as published by the Wall Street Journal and in accordance with the Success Credit Agreement. GFX Lab presents some pros and cons. Pros could be to more accurately reflect the fees accruing for the vault and also marginally increase revenue. The cons are, of course, that Success will have a substantial jump in their rates. And right now, the votes currently, majority of the vote, 41% at yes, equal to the abstain number of votes. And the signal ends on August 10th. So place your vote if you haven't yet. And that's it for the forum recap. Pretty quick. We'll get on to the hot topics now.
And thanks, Artem.
Thank you.
And likewise, there is, of course, a more detailed version of that in written form on the forum. So I would encourage everyone to check that out. Thank you for the updates, Artem. All right, that'll take us to our discussion segment. I might actually have you pause the slides here, Thomas. Basically, wanted to launch into kind of our update and discussion on delegate compensation. But kind of before we do, we thought it'd be a great moment to give everyone like a little bit of a stretch break, right? Like I said, this is a great time if you can have your camera on to turn it on and engage on the topic with us. No judgment if you do not choose to do so, of course, but would invite all those that are willing to do so. And while you're maybe standing up, giving a stretch, I did launch a little pre-poll. If you don't mind answering those 3 questions, I'll give it about 1 minute here. We're going to stretch out a little bit, answer the pre-poll questions, and we'll get into things on delegate compensation. I would love to see the odds line on that, Chris. Just reading the chat here. All right,
Looks like we have 100%.
Awesome. Yeah, we're getting up there on participation here. It's been a minute and 20 seconds since I launched the poll, so I'll go ahead and end it there and share the results. Thank you everyone for participating. Just so everyone can take a look. We're basically wondering like, hey, how well do you know the system? Has this been a concern of yours? And is this like a good topic? I'll have one quick follow-up poll at the end of this discussion setting, just to kind of see how we did. And really do appreciate y'all taking a moment to participate. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide then, Thomas. And another reminder to utilize that raised hand or dropping questions or comments in the chat, and we can work those in when appropriate. Cool. So I'll give a few brief words here. We also have Patrick with us on the call, who actually wrote the MIPs. So when we have questions and discussions, I'll probably turn over to him when appropriate. But for now, happy to give a quick rundown. So the MIPs span numbers 77 through 79, and like I said, cover both a few definitions, tightening kind of some of how we perform metrics, as well as the role of delegates. And then as well as changing and introducing MKR delegate comp. So if you'll take us to the next slide, Thomas, thank you. So we didn't create a perfect system, surprise, on the first go for delegation. With that said, I think we did learn a lot in our first year of writing this system. We are one of the few protocols that does actually pay recognized delegates directly. So there's like still a lot of learning space to do here. And these are some of our observations. Some of these were shared with some other groups we talked to when we reached out about delegate compensation. But these are kind of some of our top concerns and our motivation for including this in our budget plan for this year. Right, so we have both the role and the metrics are poorly defined, right? We have lifetime metrics. Not too many people can tell you, like, how quickly someone need to vote on an executive. We had a whole bunch of like other small quibbles I could point to where things had to get clarified. So this is actually introducing them in the MIP. So it's very clear to everyone what the rules are and that they were all agreed upon. Some feedback we had is that MKR, or that the max compensation, regardless of what form it takes, was too low to attract top talent. This possibly contributing, but maybe not related, was that the upper limit for MKR was too low. We initially set that at 10,000 MKR, and not knowing how quickly we would scale up in delegation. And then quite quickly, we ended up with a lot more than one delegate with just 10,000 MKR. So we mentioned the lack of incentives in terms of MKR vesting, right? So delegates are paid in DAI and based on the MKR that gets delegated to them. So if the people delegating to them aren't paying attention or otherwise aren't as concerned with the performance of the protocol, then you could say that delegates comp can become detached from protocol performance, which in theory isn't something we'd want to see happen. Cool, mentioned most of these other things. But yeah, basically we said, all right, well, we have a system, it's attracted some delegates, but we've gotten feedback from some of them about the challenges, as well as kind of a year of talking to people about this program and getting their first impressions. So that's kind of the motivation for what went into the MIP. And if you'll take us to the next slide, Thomas, we can talk a little bit about how it goes about addressing these. And I see a ton of chat going on, so we'll probably have to recycle through that. Feel free to use raise hand if you are comfortable explaining your points on the mic. Cool. So then in terms of how we address some of those key features, or how we address some of those problems with key features, more delegated MKR equals more compensation. Basically, we up the overall cap and we increase the total amount, meaning that if you, as a recognized delegate, attract more MKR, you get more compensation. We kept it predictable, right? Like this was a big discussion with us and another group that was proposing some changes to delegate comp. But one thing GovAlpha has experienced a lot over the past year and talking with people who are somewhat interested in the delegate program is that's always their first question is like, all right, well, how much reasonably can I make as a delegate? And not being able to answer that question definitely hinders recruitment. It also, from just a theoretical level, keeps delegates like more focused on trying to figure out their compensation rather than trying to perform their duties, which also is suboptimal. So keeping it predictable was like an objective of ours. Though some of our changes could be interpreted as like less good for smaller delegates, we did still keep the general curve. That is, you get paid a lot more for smaller amounts of MKR delegated per MKR. And that's just as a way of bootstrapping, encouraging new delegates to come aboard and give it a try without being subject to essentially no compensation at the start of it. And finally, yeah, we feel like these changes really do kind of point towards the idea of a professional delegation, right? Of someone performing this role full time, because a year into the program, we've realized that this is a pretty complicated thing, governance. The amount of proposals, the complexity of those proposals are both increasing. So essentially, it's at least GovAlpha's stance that we're going to need to be prepared to pay for kind of the professionalism and the amount of effort that it takes to govern. Cool. Go ahead and take us to the next slide, Thomas. All right, here are a few other solutions. I don't feel the need to run through them all directly as we've kind of covered them. In terms of the actual numbers, our previous maximum compensation was 144,000 in DAI. Now it's 300,000 DAI. But keeping in mind that there is an MKR vesting component, which could essentially double that, depending on how the price action for MKR performs. We're still on a quadratic curve, so a lot of people like that. Was easy enough to explain, common enough use, I guess, in the industry. Cool. And then the only other major point at the bottom there worth highlighting is we did receive some feedback. I think Chris referenced it earlier in the call about how bundling delegate comp with other items does kind of create these perverse incentives for supporting an executive, regardless of how you feel about the rest of the content. So our proposed way of addressing that with this MIP set would be switching to delegates only getting paid quarterly for their DAI compensation, but it would be an entirely exclusive executive bundle. So, well, exclusive executive, no bundle. So it would be the only thing that the delegates would be voting. Cool. And I think there's one more slide with some potential discussion topics. Excellent. But first, kind of just wanted to catch up on chat. Saw 20 messages go off there. Does anyone have any immediate questions or comments based on what I said while I catch up here? I see a raised hand from Makerman if you want to take the mic.
Thanks, Peyton. I guess I'll launch part of the discussion. So most of my comments are in the forum. One of my biggest issues, and I think the DAO will end up having to deal with this, is the self-nomination or self-election process, that there is no nomination nor an election process. And so I have other comments on this, but conceptually, if you can self-elect or self-appoint and back yourself with Maker, Maker could end up with 50 to 100 delegates with various ranges of Maker, and you guys can decide in the end whether that's good or bad. But I think generally there should be some element of a nomination and election process and a fixed number of seats so that there's some real competition for those versus just trying to compete for Maker without much communication. But that's kind of all I got here.
Thanks for that, Maker Man. And I guess I would just add, like, that was a consideration in some of the talks, which is like, do we want to target a specific amount of delegates? This method kind of said no, because we don't know what that number should be. But definitely open to hearing perspectives on that. Well, I see 𝘳𝘠𝘦 with their hand raised, if you want to take the mic.
Sure, just like a quick question for the other delegates. So MIP 79 has a section on retroactive Maker vesting that kind of gets some of the current delegates would be receiving basically like tens of thousands of dollars worth of Maker. I don't know if that seems like a conflict of interest to me that would push a lot of people to abstain. Just wanted to know y'all's feelings on that, or if it should be spun off, or if you don't see it as an issue.
You brought up my other point that I left out, is that I have, I think, a number of delegates, including myself, brought this up in the past when this first came up, is that there is a distinct conflict of interest on voting on the size of your own compensation. And inherently, I would like to see Maker holders decide that, which would be IOUs and governance would be a suggestion, is that this should be compensation for delegates should be decided by the Maker holders, not by the delegates. As a delegate, I'm going to respect the wishes of Maker holders. So if they poll on that and come up with a compensation plan, I will pass it as an executive, but I would like to have Maker holders decide on what that compensation should be to remove this conflict of interest.
Yeah, so I'll take that one on the kind of, there's 2 points been raised there. So there's been the retrospective point that 𝘳𝘠𝘦's raised, and I will just highlight briefly why we've included that within the MIP rather than separating it out. The previous time that we had, we were working out delegate compensation, we preceded it with a delegate compensation trial that was then evolved into MIP 61 and ratified. And so as we were working through the trial, we were changing things as we went, and that included some of the metric cutoffs, and it included kind of changing the amount of DAI people were being paid as well during that process. And what happened during that was that we then had people who would have qualified for DAI compensation under the new rules, but who had missed out under the old rules. And that created a situation which we felt was unfair, and then required a signal request and a subsequent executive vote to fix. And we did get it through eventually. But that was kind of the rationale for including the retrospective compensation in this proposal, because it was kind of, the idea was, well, we'll avoid that situation we ended up in, a year ago. So that was what was informing that. If people feel really, really strongly, we're happy to take that out and put it into a separate vote, but that's why it's included. So hopefully that kind of explains that. And to make a man's point, ultimately we would love for people to take the initiative and to make these proposals, and ideally it wouldn't even be 𝘱𝘭𝘆 that are making these proposals either, because ultimately we're massively conflicted as well. We work really closely with the delegates, and we would prefer not to be the ones that were having to write these proposals. But ultimately, for anything to happen in the DAO, someone has to A, write it, and B, MKR holders have to vote on it. And the delegates will all be voting on the executives to distribute it as well. So it's really hard to find a way to come up with these proposals that doesn't involve conflicts of interest, unfortunately. We try to minimize them as much as we can. And we're willing, again, please give us advice if you think there's anything that we need to change, or a different mechanism you would like us to use. But it's a really hard problem to solve.
Thanks for that insight there, Patrick. And seeing more talk about that in the chat. Chris, I don't know if you're in a place where you can talk, but you are welcome to bring up some of these points on the mic if you like. Yeah, go for it.
I was just wondering, I haven't seen any rationale behind the numbers as far as the 300K cap and then the matching amount in MKR. I was just wondering if anybody could chime in as to how those numbers were reached and how they're justified.
Yeah, so starting with the MKR, that is kind of based on how GovAlpha's MKR vesting works. So, which is a system that was approved by MKR holders and delegates earlier this year. So we take, because we have a CU where lots of people work hourly, it's really hard to kind of project FTE equivalents for kind of MKR vesting. So we retrospectively look at how much everyone's been paid, and we multiply that and turn it into a number of MKR that we then request from the DAO. So we did that in February, and we did that. We were about to do it again for our next round. So we took a system that we use, as a core unit, and that has been approved unanimously at the time it was approved. So we felt that it was kind of an established method of doing it. The number was again kind of, it was one initially, that was what we proposed for our core unit, was a 1x multiplier. Again, I don't feel hugely strongly about that number. That number can be amended if people feel strongly that it should be a lower number. And with regards to the DAI compensation, essentially it's a roughly 2x of what we're currently paying, and that was kind of why we went for that. It's slightly more than a 2x just because it made it a round number. The idea was we wanted to significantly increase the income, but we also wanted to significantly increase how much MKR you needed for that. So it's worked out by looking at the curve that we've developed. It's about a 2x increase in pay, but a 3x increase in the amount of MKR required. So we believe, made it a lot more difficult to hit the max. But there isn't any like deep philosophical background to it. There was, it was just a, roughly how much do we think would be reasonable. And again, we are willing to amend these things. So these aren't set in stone. Please let us know what you think would be reasonable.
But doubling the DAI comp must have had some like conversations behind it, some justifications. Like, why are we looking to double the DAI comp?
So the justification was we want to be able to attract people who are at the top of field in legal areas, in financial areas, in just in the wider crypto space in general. And when you talk to people, they will, and they say, how much can I earn? It sounds like a lot of work. And you say 144K is the max. People aren't interested. So you have to try and find a way to attract those people. It's not a deep science. I will hold my hands up. There's not been, a huge discussion about it. There's not been, a huge amount of, sitting down with a pen and paper and working out how much we want to pay it. It was more of a gut feeling thing that we concluded as a group we thought seemed reasonable.
So sorry to hog up. Tell me if I'm talking too much.
No, go for it.
But the idea here is to attract more people from a traditional finance world, it sounds like, as far as legal, finance, because what we're saying, it sounds like, is the current delegates and the delegates we can attract with a mere $144,000 a year, which, by the way, is a lot of money to most people. The quality or the education level, or like, that's not exciting enough. So it sounds like we want to attract people who are making $300,000 to $600,000 a year in the traditional world in their current occupation. Am I on the right track, or am I just way off?
So that's a fair assessment. So that's kind of feedback we've had from the community or the CU members. The kind of person that they want as a delegate is someone who's got legal or financial expertise. But it's not, those aren't the only industries we would be looking at. Like I said, the wider crypto industry as a whole. If we could get, more people that are kind of people that we believe can attract MKR to be delegated, we want to broaden the pool of delegated MKR. So if we can get people who people want to delegate to, people they know, then that's also something we would see as a benefit as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, let me address the point here. So, I'm an older person. I have a career, right? And I get paid based on my job way more than Maker paid me, even if I did manage to make the top, right? And so if you want people with 20 to 30 years of experience, not just in finance or law, but any other fields like scientific endeavors might not make as much. But if you really want qualified people, and it's with significant experience that they can apply to certain parts of Maker, you kind of do want to come up somewhat in salary. I mean, I agree with you. I posted on this for a 20-year-old that's just looking to do something, has zero experience, maybe a bit of education, or a 25-year-old, 100K is going to look pretty good. But for somebody who's 50 that just came out of finance and was making $500,000 a year, 144K isn't even going to bring them around.
I don't like the way that this, denigrates our existing batch of delegates, right? Like, we've got people who work hard and have, accumulated maker from the community. And, are we saying they're not good enough? That's harsh.
Brian, I hope that isn't the impression that people are getting from this. It's more about attracting more people to MKR, to Maker as delegates, rather than saying the people we have aren't good enough. But if anyone has had that impression from this, I do apologize.
It's about attracting more delegates who are interested in taking MakerDAO further into real world finance and traditional finance, and possibly helping navigate future regulation. But it's sort of a capitulation to those things, which is my main beef with it. And I look at this as kind of a mandate on those issues. If this goes through, then it's just straight up a mandate for real world, continued real world immersion for the DAO. It'll create a board of directors.
It's fair to say that's certainly not our intention with the proposal, but do appreciate the perspective there, Chris. And also in regards to like the pay in the current delegates, like that's also been very consistent feedback we've gotten, is that the amount of time it takes to like actually do their job properly is a lot. So that's another motivation behind the pay increase, is just like, all right, well, if the people who are in the position now are telling us that it's taking up all their time and resources, like providing more resources seems like a logical proposal, at least something to discuss. Well, I see TJ had his hand raised. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Peyton. I mean, unless I'm sort of misunderstanding the proposal, I guess I don't see what we're losing here, right? If you're upping the pay and it brings you a wider pool of parties that would be interested in being delegates for MakerDAO, and then ultimately it's up to those delegates, the now wider pool of them, to attract MKR to their platforms. Is this not just a kind of more effective and broader meritocracy?
I would say if it works, right? Like if if it works, that would hopefully be how it plays out. But I think it's fair to question, like, if the incentives and the activation energy, so to speak, to get involved with Maker, if those things are prohibitive from allowing true competition to take place. I don't know, but that's certainly something that could throw a wrench in those plans. Pretty lively chat here. I don't know if anyone wants to hop on the mic and say some of this. I'm happy to give a summary if not. Yeah, take it away, Punka.
Thank you. So it's actually not what I came up with, but like I also know, on the forum read like I think good comment on this. Like if we have like more resources available, like the pay, there can be also more people actually involved with the delegate. And like I feel like, you know, it's hard as a one person to understand everything. I think it's easier if we have kind of expertise. And I think this can enable really like and that's something what we are trying to do, definitely like have people which are having experience in some parts of the protocol, so they can really like advise on how we should move there and so on. So I think this can really improve the overall governance, just like because we will be bringing like specialized people even like behind the delegates, and that's kind of how I was thinking about it.
Thanks for that perspective, and that was certainly a motivation of ours as well. Much as if you're one of the top delegates in the system, like if you need dire support to work through all the proposals and all the governance things, like then obviously the salary needs to provide that, or you're going to be unable to. Sorry, I had to chuckle at Paper's comment. I have a feeling I might know the subject. Yeah, go Nick, take it away.
Sure. I guess one thing kind of to keep in context is that their job is very unstable. Like, yeah, if you can get someone an expert to join for $300K a year, but like at any point, a maker holder can just undelegate, you know, 15,000 maker, and then they're not making anything the next day. So that is probably going to be a factor. Is just if we can provide stability, you know, that can be a counterbalancing point to compensation. But as is, people have to really consider, if I do this full time, like, is it worth the risks?
Yeah, thanks, Kodak.
And to add that, that's a great point about stability. Sorry, Peyton, and that's one of the reasons why we're raising the DAI component as well, is because DAI is, hopefully, if we're all doing our jobs correctly, is stable, whereas MKR obviously isn't. So we do want to make sure that there is that attraction of a stable income for the delegates as well.
Perspective for sure. I just wanted to call out Chris's posted in the chat to the counter proposal of maybe scrapping the changes to the DAI comp and just adding the MKR instead. I can say, at least from my perspective, the main thing you lose there is the cap incentive, right? Like, I think we at GovAlpha were a little scared at first. That's why 10K was the recommended cap, and I know SES for a while has been harping on us that number was set too low. And yeah, that would kind of be the main trade-off if we got rid of that, I think, unless you've got a different perspective, Patrick.
No, fully agree.
Yeah, I see just in case another recognized delegate with their hand raised, if you want to take it away.
Thank you there, Peyton. I guess this is a question for GovAlpha regarding the raising of the maximum cap. Have you considered the effects of concentration of delegates? Because it's not that long ago that we effectively, there was maybe 3 delegates that kind of decided which way the votes were going, and I think we should be mindful of the dangers of concentrating voting power too much, because there is clear advantages to having more eyes and more heads being involved in a decision, even if ultimately the maker that support those delegates come from the same source. I think it's still a better system if that is distributed among several sets of eyes and brains and expertise, because with too few people, we run a real risk of someone having a bad day, or someone sort of pushing their horse or their favorite pet project, which is something we can eliminate with having more delegates. In fact, I think maybe we should explore having a max cap on delegates for this particular reason. So you ensure that at least you get a certain number of individuals involved in any one given decision, even though obviously any maker holder can just vote themselves, but in order to provide as healthy governance as possible, I think that is something we should at least look into the future.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So that's a good question, right? Like, this was the primary reason for setting the cap at 10K, was because we were concerned about this consolidation. I don't know if 𝘬𝘪𝘴 or Juan is on the call, but some of their talks on this subject definitely shaped my thinking a little bit. It's still a concern of mine for sure, right? Like one of the easiest ways to lose control of the whole thing is a governance manipulation. So definitely a concern, but I think if the MKR holders want to delegate to the same people, like that is their right. We should make them aware of the potential dangers of doing so. But yeah, cool. I do see one with his hand raised if you want to explain some of the thinking there.
Yeah, so I mean, what the discussion is.
And your mic's a little quiet, sorry.
I think it takes some time to warm up. Is it better?
No.
Be right back.
All right. One's going to refresh that mic. Sorry about that. There was someone who had their hand raised too. Oh, maybe one. All right, one's going to work on the mic. There was someone who had their hand raised and put it down. I don't know if you had a separate point. But,
Yeah, it was me. I was kind of debating whether I want to ask this question, but the question is really, so we want to attract this kind of higher tier of delegate, and I see that we're doing that with this higher comp, but is there any work on the other side of it, like creating perhaps like job descriptions for delegates that we're looking for? Like, are we looking for a legal expert with like 20 years of experience and some sort of specialty? And can we create a delegate pay sort of opportunity for that specific JD? So I'm curious, like, yeah, like, is there any thought on the other side of it?
So that's a good question, David. I guess the issue that 𝘰𝘬𝘭 have with that method is if it was coming from 𝘰𝘬𝘭, it's us implying certain characteristics of a delegate are better than other characteristics of delegates. So that, you know, with our neutrality mandate, we really don't want to be saying, you know, this delegate is better than that delegate, because it's not something we think we should be commenting on. But the second thing is it's also up to the MKR holders themselves. So, you know, we can't know what an MKR holder with 5K MKR sitting on the sidelines is looking for unless they tell us. So making those job descriptions, it might not be the person that they're looking for. So it's a really tricky area.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Can
Yeah,
you hear me better now?
much better.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, so the issue of bringing more more delegates to avoid the coordination of a potential attack, I think that's a double-edged sword, right? Like basically what we're saying is they should not be able to coordinate, and that's particularly dangerous when we're trying to build coherent vision or some kind of objectives. So we're saying we're going to bring a lot of people so that they cannot coordinate. So yes, it will be harder for them to coordinate a governance attack, but at the same time, it will also be much harder to coordinate what the protocol should be doing. So that was the point that I wanted to bring. Maybe it's a bit late, but yeah.
No, that's a great one. Because yeah, that was very much our perspective, was like, it's so dangerous to have them coordinate. So we'll put a lower cap in place. But the kind of counterpoint to that is it really discourages from going out and seeking additional MKR. And then also, like, if these people are trusted in making all these other decisions with the protocol, perhaps like it's a little foolish to think like, oh, well, once they get to a certain threshold, they can no longer be trusted. Yeah, go for it, Maker Man.
Oh, I was waiting for Justin. So, the other factor in this whole delegate equation is this very tenuous and connection between delegates and their delegators, right? I mean, if you don't have maker delegated, you're not going to get compensation, right? And so just because you have pay there, we could attract the biggest, baddest whomever, and unless there's a delegator that's going to stick their maker with them for some commitment period, why would anybody do that, right? I mean, it's one of the biggest issues as I see it, is that there's no real nomination, there's no tenure. This idea that I could be elected to Congress and my vote yanked and my pay yanked because the people who voted me into office basically decide they're not going to support me with their backing anymore. It's kind of ludicrous from this idea that anybody can be a delegate and expect some reasonable compensation, whatever that is. I mean, I'm going to point out GFX today basically reached out to our asset originators when no one else did over this whole RWF scenario. And that's a really important thing that we had a delegate doing on his own initiative, right? And when you look at compensation for like acts in the protocol, I would like to see delegate compensation reach, part of that compensation be related to what the protocol values as what we expect out of delegates for, not just pushing buttons, but what else, right? Would you expect for some of this pay component, right? So those are my thoughts. It's just, I see a lot of issues here and I don't see a clean solution to how to do them. And raising pay here, it's not going to guarantee we're going to get qualified people because we can't guarantee that we're going to drop the maker on them to give them the appropriate compensation.
Thanks, Maker Man. Seen some cool references to Euler gauges from Monet Supply. Definitely a fun thing to look into if you're unfamiliar. Cool. So I'm aware that we do have an overflow topic that's potentially like something people might want to discuss even more. Though there's still a lot of chat on this subject, so we'll kind of propose it to the call then. Yeah, if you have more to add here, questions, comments, concerns, I'd encourage you to hop on the mic and do so. Otherwise, we'll think about wrapping up. Yeah, certainly have been some funny comments in the chat today, so hope everyone's enjoying that. All right, so before transitioning topics, I would really appreciate it if you just took a second to answer these 3 yes or no questions on delegate stuff. Kind of want to be using these poll features a bit more during these questions. If you're watching the recording and unable to participate live, I'm basically just wondering, how well do you understand the new structure? Do you think it's better than the old one? And would you like to see this type of things discussed more on later things? Go alpha ads. I'll have to follow up with paper on that one. I got about as many of you as participated on the first one. So in the poll there, share the results. You can see the fun part. Does everyone else think like you? Or do you have some arguing to do? All right, excellent. So we're gonna move into the last half hour of the call here. Like I said, we do have this overflow discussion topic. I suspect there might be a lot of voices that might want to weigh in. So let's try to keep it orderly. But yeah, maybe stand up and do a quick stretch before we get into it, because this is our final stretch, and really appreciate all the engagement going on here today. Makerman's comment. I don't know if we have professional covered, but there's definitely some poker sharks in the waters here at Maker. Cool. All right. Thomas, if you mind taking us to the next slide. Yeah, like I said, this is an overflow subject. That said, it is still pretty fresh and perhaps still pretty raw. So yeah, I don't know how much prompting I'll need. But for background, the other day, a proposal did go up on the Maker forum to split up the real world finance core unit into 2 separate operating units. Since then, we have seen a few more posts, one of them claiming that the basically everyone but the facilitator of real world finance had been let go. So that does inform this split proposal perhaps a little bit. Yeah, basically just want to open up this topic, see if there's any questions in the community that we can address. I know this came up at the delegate office hours a little bit earlier. So perhaps if someone from that call would maybe want to recap some of the things sent there, that might be a good starting point.
I don't know, Peyton, I was there at the delegate meeting. I won't say there was consensus on this. There was support, was that we really needed to hear from Will on where he stood on this, that, Maker has a real world finance facilitator. And while there has been some newsworthy activities there that the people involved have come forward to discuss, we still don't have a formal word from Will directly, as far as I know. People, please correct me if I'm wrong. And until we have that word from Will, and I don't know how long we're going to wait for this, that's probably the topic of discussion really, is when do we expect to hear from Will on what happened with this core unit so that a decision can be made. Simultaneously, we have asset originators or asset origination that's kind of on the table here because of what's happened. And so I don't know how we address that issue without having a report from Will on this.
Thanks for that, Makerman, and definitely a lot of echoing support for that in the previous call, right? Which is that we are down, we have to discuss this stuff publicly to some extent, but really isn't fair if we're only hearing from one side. So I do want to be mindful of that. Yeah, is anyone who was on the real world finance team want to speak up at this point? Don't feel obliged to do so, but you are welcome. All right, see a lot of chat, but a lot of people afraid to get on the mic. Perhaps that reflects the sensitive nature of this conversation.
I can always kick it off, Peyton.
Bring it on, Robert.
Okay, I just wanted to wait. So from a CES perspective and a collateral onboarding perspective, my main concern is business continuity. So we have work that's currently in the pipeline. We have deals underway. We have some deals that are being originated, and the ex RWF members had been working on them. So Will can speak for himself whenever he appears, but for me, it's more about we need to keep business as usual as best as possible. And we have 3 individuals that had been working on the team that are no longer on that team. And so for me, what I'm just trying to do is to determine next steps on things like the MIP 65. The MIP 65 is an important piece of work. I think we all agree, and we need legal support on that. So one of the suggestions that I've offered is that anyone can be hired as a contractor inside of the DAO, and any core unit can pay contractors. So what I'm offering is that CES is willing, provided there's a budgeting discussion to have for the additional compensation, but for business continuity. And I've got a list of items from the ex-RWF people that at least in the near term, the items that are currently work in progress and we need action on. And I would highly recommend that the community take action to be able to, however we might want to, whether a governance poll or something else, be able to continue to move forward this work. The other area is that even if a new team is hired, there's still a transition period. I've never known any team to kind of come in and be productive day one. So even if there is a new team, we do need a transitionary period to transition the old work to the new team. So I want to start with that comment.
I don't know if there's anyone from Real World Finance in the call, but yeah, so the DAO needs to approve a budget. Right now, Will was the trusted actor. So I don't know, Robert, if providing a core unit as a temporary measure helps in any way, because if the DAO approves the budget, they might as well approve the trusted actor, unless they are not trusting any of the, or like Christian or the others to actually go there. But otherwise, I don't see this as much help. I think it's very nice, but yeah, what's saying in the chat, right? Like there's no need for transition, etc.
Well, so remember, I was being very specific. I'm a core unit facilitator. I can choose to hire contractors at will to complete work for the core unit that I then take responsibility for. So at the end of the day, the facilitator is responsible for the work of their core unit. What I'm suggesting is that I'd be willing to hire people, the ex-RWF people as contractors to help us complete this work, as well as transition the work if there is a new team available. So in addition, I would just be offering through a governance poll or something to say, hey, I'm asking the community to authorize a one-time transfer to CES, potentially from funds that had been returned by RWF. And then if there are any funds that are left over and we give it a time frame, we just simply return that to the DAO. So again, my focus is purely on business continuity. I'm not addressing any of the dynamics of the core unit or the new core units. I'm simply trying to make sure that work continues to get completed.
Appreciate that, Robert, and for offering a potential solution. So I do see and want to note the calls for hearing a little bit from the Real World Finance core unit, but also want to give a vote for 𝘂𝘧𝘕 to comment as he took the time to raise his hand, and I do appreciate that.
Sure, just a quick response. I mean, so that's something William should have considered when he was firing these people. So we're kind of, if you're hiring them on to do the same work, we're kind of just undermining William. We're saying, you know, he was wrong to just fire them and he should have done something different. Which that might be the right solution, but like we have to be very intentional about what we're doing. We're saying, hey, you know, William screwed up. He should have done a 1 month transition period or whatever. So we're gonna kind of undo what he was trying to do.
I can't speak for Will, and I'm not hiring people to form a new core unit. I'd be hiring people to do work in progress. That's all.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's something you consider when you fire someone, right? You say, hey, they've got this work that needs to be done. Like, but it's so important that I fire them that I'm just gonna disregard that, right? I'm gonna let this work go undone because they need to be fired right now instead of being offboarded over the course of a month.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. And I have been reaching out to Will and talking with Will and offering suggestions as well. So I'm not doing this in a vacuum.
All right. Well, I also appreciate how difficult this is to have, like, when all the facts or all the parties aren't present to talk about the issues. So do want to kind of call out that again. I see Justin with his hand raised. Take it away, Justin.
Thank you, Peyton. I think I think one important point here that was brought up is that I do agree with the points that have been raised before, that we should definitely hear both sides of this story before making any final decisions. But the wheels are spinning. We need to actually make a decision and move forward and sort of deal with the immediate situation as well. So we do need to address the question of how long are we willing to wait to have both sides of the story. I think we should actually go to a decision on that question on this forum today. And I personally don't think we should go more than a week from this point before we actually decide on at least the general direction where we're going. Because we have, like it's been said, we have counterparties. This is not only a strict protocol issue. This involves a lot of other actors as well, and it also puts our reputation at the stake. And I think one of the greatest advantages that Maker Protocol has right now over many other DeFi projects is a rock solid reputation. We start messing with that, we're giving away one of our greatest advantages. And I don't think we should do that. So my suggestion would be next governance and risk call, we make a call on this thing, at least general direction.
Hey, it's Eric. I understand no one else has spoke for Real World, so I guess I will. I'm just not sure what to tell you folks. I mean, if people read the Christian's post and have a sense of the timing events, let me just lay out the timing. You know, the three of us, you know, we're working under Will since January, you know, and the three of us work really well together. And obviously it's not ideal with Will. I think we've done a lot of good work together. A couple of weeks ago, Christian kind of got to the point. He's our attorney partner, where he lost confidence in Will, as he posted, and just didn't want to work with him anymore. He felt like he was being set up to fail, you know, with Will leading the group. This is all in the post. I'm not saying anything new. And I have to admit, TJ and I will concur. And so, you know, the idea is that three of us, you know, really like Maker. We're really the ones who've done HVB and SocGen, you know, 99%, and really want to continue, you know, and we talked to Will about it, you know, and had a discussion that Christian wasn't that comfortable, nor were we. And then Will kind of, what did he do next? Yeah, he posted that we were going different directions in the forum without talking to us. Then we said, hey, you know, let's try to work out an agreement. You know, maybe we split this and go another way. And he never responded to us. And then yesterday he terminated us all in an email. I mean, it's just a sequence of events. It's hard to know exactly what to do, but we know that we've done a lot of good work and want to do a lot of innovation here and keep going forwards. I think there's a lot more good RWAs to go, and there's a lot more innovation coming. I'm just not sure what else to tell you guys. It's a weird set of events. I understand you want to talk to Will. There's a lot of questions I think you should ask him. And I'm just, you know, I'm not aligned with Will, so I can't speak on his behalf clearly. And I think we've got a really strong vision and a really good track record, you know, and want to take it to the next level. And that's what we're really focused on. But you guys here as delegates, managers, or you have to make some other decisions when our proposal is part of it, but you have other things you have to consider. And I regret that you guys have to deal with this headache, but it is what it is.
Thanks for your insight there, Eric. Yeah, I'm seeing papers called to table this topic again, as well as like Justin's idea of coming back next week with a a bit more measured approach, a bit more intentional, I guess, who we have here to talk about the issues and what the plans are. So I would definitely support that. So I don't want to cut discussion short if this
Yeah, I
did
just
bring up
want
anything.
to
Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing, that the situation is not new and a lot of people are in the know. And I would suggest that everyone that is delegated from 𝘰 just ask 𝘰 what he wants. There is no need to create a drama, just ask him what he wants.
It seems that until we get that information from MIPs holders, one of the things we were saying that we don't need more real world finance, or at least not for now, unless it's just research. And then potentially the MIPs holders gave Will the mission, and it's his core unit and his mandate. His team has the right to try to create another core unit, but then this is more of a it's an option open to anyone, right? Like anyone can come and propose a core unit. So with that in mind, I think it's important to respect what Will wants to do now. And if someone wants to propose like bringing him down as an offboarding, we can also do that as well. But that's not what's being discussed right now. So what he does with his core unit, I think it's more internal to him. So yeah, with that in mind, I wanted to shortly shield the SES update tomorrow. We're going to be discussing on how makers should move more into the project-based budgeting instead of the core unit-based budgeting, which is bringing all this drama forward and not creating a lot of value. So if you guys want to join us tomorrow, that'd be great. Otherwise, we might have recaps of videos and whatnot the following weeks.
Awesome. Thanks for that one.
Patrick is asking at what time. I think it's 2:30 UTC, 4:30 Central European, etc.
Yeah, I think we can even help with that a little if you want to go to the next slide, Thomas. Cool. So yeah, appreciate that, Juan, and we'll kind of take the opportunity to start winding us down here. Have the upcoming calls list here. As Juan mentioned, that is at 2:30 UTC tomorrow for the SES biweekly status update. We've got a bunch of other reoccurring calls here. You'll see a lot of core unit office hours, the decentralized voter committee meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. Obviously this call is on there again, same time, same place next week. So yeah, please take a look. You can add that calendar. It's linked at the bottom of any Maker executive vote. That's usually my quickest way to find it. So feel free to do that and attend some calls. But yeah, I wanted to start winding us down here and thank everyone for coming out and participating in these talks. This is our weekly meeting, so we'll have another chance to do it all again next Thursday. Really appreciate the input on potential topics we can have. As a reminder, you can always comment on the GNR post we put up every week detailing the agenda if you have something to add or something you would like explored within a segment. Sam's saying we should syndicate the show and monetize, so might need a bit more adept host, but I'd still support it. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, especially if you're new and you sat through the call. I know a lot of the stuff we talk about can fly over your head. Promise that it is a rewarding venture to drink from the fire hose and figure out what MakerDAO is all about. At least rewarding for me. Yeah. Excellent. Get a request for some outro music. Maybe that's something we can work into future shows as well. But for now, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Encourage you to continue the conversation in the forums and in our Discord chat. And we'll see you same time, same place next week. Thanks, everybody.